Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We will sing Gentle Bliss on the last page in your book.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So, happy Mother's Day, and to celebrate this day, our topic today is the keeper of my stories. If we look at our life and ask ourselves, what is my life? What do I understand from my life? And we will see that our life is nothing but a collection of stories. Stories that we remember from our past, and the stories that we don't remember, which oftentimes we have heard from our parents, from our grandparents, of the kind of naughtiness or whatever it is that we did when we were very young. And we have known some of the things, like just a few days after our birth, what happened. None of us remembers that. And the only way for us to have access to the early parts of our own life, we depend on others who were older then and who remembered it. Even when we read biographies, when we read lives of other great people, essentially what are these biographies? What are these lives other than a collection of incidents and stories, all tied together with a narrative which kind of holds it all together. So similarly, our lives also are a collection of lots and lots of stories and incidents. And so long as all of these stories and incidents form a coherent narrative, our life may seem to have had some meaning, some significance. And as I said, many of the things from our life that we don't remember, don't know, have come to us. Those memories have come to us from the elders in our family. And oftentimes, it's the mother. Probably amongst all of our family members, well, it's usually, almost by definition, it's the mother who has known us right from the moment we were born. And our self-understanding of ourselves depends so much on what we have experienced and what we have heard about ourselves from others. And once our mothers go, as eventually, as all human beings go, we know that we are not here forever. And so once these elders in the family who know about our stories that sometimes we ourselves may not know or remember, once they are gone, those stories have disappeared with them. Unless they are stored in some form. Today, it's with the onset of a digital revolution, it's possible to retain some of that through photographs, through videos, through tapes. A privilege that those of us of an older generation didn't have, at least not to the extent that the present generation has. But even then, hearing about the stories of our life directly can never be substituted through photographs or videos. The same is true about the lives of our parents as well. Sometimes it's so easy to forget. And I remember the first time it came to me, it almost seemed like a big revelation that sometimes how often have we remembered that our parents were also at one time little children. Because right from the time we see our parents, they're already adults. So it's very difficult to imagine our parents being little, our father being a little boy, our mother being a little girl. And if we don't have access to the early part of our own lives, and we do depend on stories that we hear from our parents, then it would be even more, and still obviously we don't have any access to when our parents were little themselves. And obviously they had no access to it, and they probably heard about their childhood from their parents, like our grandparents. And so it's also not only just interesting, but it also makes for a more coherent narrative about what is this life of which I'm a part, this family of which I'm a part. And a few years ago, when I had visited India, and so this thought when it came to me some years ago, off and on, my mother had told me some of the things of her childhood, but then I thought, and this thought came like, well, when my mother goes away, I won't know who she was until I know a lot of the things I don't know about her. And so I had carried one camera with me, and I just once made my mother sit in a room, and I said, I want to hear everything about your childhood when you were little. And she became a little conscious when I had this camera. So I said, don't look at the camera. Just look at me and just tell me. And it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. So I mention all this to show that it's only through stories of our lives and the lives of people around us that we get to know them really well. We come closer through these stories. And therefore, it's important that we never underestimate the power of stories in our own lives. And and sometimes we may notice, those of us whose parents are no more, sometimes we might see that there's something you wanted to know, and there's something that only our father or mother could have told that to us, and she's not there anymore. And then it just feels like, oh, I'm never going to know about these things, unless, of course, as I said, it was recorded somewhere in some form. And therefore, this is I think, a good day to reflect on what these elders in our family mean to us, what their significance is to our own life, and how it in some ways makes our life more meaningful, more fulfilling. Now, when we read the lives of these great ones, those whom we worship as saints, as prophets, as incarnations, we see that their lives also are lives of collection of stories. And how were those lives written? How would we know the incidents from the childhood of Buddha or Jesus or Ramakrishna or Chaitanya, unless elders in their family narrated it somehow to someone who then passed it on? One of the things that we may notice in the lives of all these great spiritual luminaries, that they were all very close to their mothers. See, for instance, let's take the life of Jesus. The very first miracle that we see in his life, the miracle that he did, was really at the request of his mother when they were at a wedding. And in the middle of the wedding festivities, the wine ran out, and then Mary said to Jesus, actually, if you look at the New Testament, Mary speaks so little, but her presence is always, it's a very assuring, calming presence. And when this wine ran out at that wedding, all that Mary said to Jesus was, they have no wine. That's it. Now, at first we read that Jesus holds back and he says, what is that to me and you? My hour is not yet come. Now, Mary, our mother, does not answer her son directly. She simply tells the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. And of course, then Jesus tells them to fill 6 jars of 20 gallons of water, and then we read that that water is transformed into wine. Now here, Jesus is making a very clear statement. By following his mother's request, he shows through his actions that he in fact is the Messiah. It is at this point that Jesus' ministry truly begins. So it begins with what his mother asked him to do. Now later on, of course, a whole theology was built around Mary's this request and the way Jesus responded to it. According to the official church doctrine, Mary is an intercessor. She is not, at least in Catholic doctrine, and I think in most mainstream Christian doctrine, Mary is not seen as divine herself theologically, but she's seen as an intercessor. One who, she's like a saint, but a special kind of saint. But there is this popular belief that Jesus would grant any request of his mother, and that is why Mary came to be seen as the friend and protector of the devotees. Philip Neri, who was canonized in the 17th century, he wrote, "There is no more excellent way to obtain graces from God than to seek them through Mary, because her divine Son cannot refuse her anything." The 14th century Italian priest and saint Bernardino of Siena said, "At the command of Mary, all obey, even God." And a few days ago, when we celebrated the birthday of Chaitanya, we saw that when Chaitanya wanted to renounce the world and become a monk, his mother was reluctant. She wasn't happy that he was going away. And he promised her that he would visit her now and then, whenever she needed him. And he kept that promise all through life. It was very uncharacteristic. In those days, if someone became a monk, they would just go to Benares or to Himalayas and would never be heard of again. So someone becoming a monk from a family was almost like losing a child. But Chaitanya was so solicitous of his mother's wishes that he said, "I will be by your side whenever you want me." And he did that. And to those of us who are familiar with Ramakrishna's life, his devotion to mother is well known. How we know that when she became old, Ramakrishna brought her from Dakshineshwar from Kamarpukur to Dakshineshwar and took care of her. She lived on those of you who have been there, mother lived in that tiny little room, Nahabat, it's called the concert tower, and mother lived on the upper floor. And every day, you can see in Ramakrishna's life, he would be so immersed in God consciousness, he would be absorbed in samadhi, but he never ever forgot. Every day he would go and spend some time with his mother. In fact, when he did his pilgrimage to northern India and among the different places he went to, when he was in Vrindavan, the place which is so much associated with the childhood of Krishna, he didn't want to leave. In fact, all arrangements were already done for him to stay there permanently for the rest of his life. And then Ramakrishna said, then he remembered, "Oh, my mother is there all alone on this, in that room." And he said he gave up all thought of settling down in Vrindavan and returned back to Dakshineshwar. Holy Mother's life also we see how she took care of her mother and then later of all her younger siblings when her mother became old. In Swami Vivekananda's case, this was one quote from his life. I wrote down in my diary, I just saw it this morning, when I was a college student and I was reading Vivekananda's life and thinking of becoming a monk. And so this is exactly what Vivekananda said. "It was my mother who inspired me to this. Her character was a constant inspiration to my life and work." We can see the deference that not only Ramakrishna, Holy Mother and Swamiji, but the other disciples of Ramakrishna had in their lives. Now, Swami Vivekananda once wrote, I believe in a letter, he said, "We have not been so deferential to the wishes of our fathers, but where mother is concerned, we've always, mother comes first, as they say." I remember I joined the monastery in Bombay in the 70s, and the Swami who was head of the monastery then was Swami Niramayananda. He was a disciple of Swami Akhandananda, secretary actually, and he was very closely associated with Swami Akhandananda. And so he told me what his guru, that is Swami Akhandananda, had told him. He said that, Swami Akhandananda said, "Unless you have the blessings of your mother, you will not achieve anything in monastic life or spiritual life." And then this Swami had told me then, that he said, every time, I was just a young novice then, just barely in my upper teens, and he said, every time your mother comes to visit you in the monastery, you can keep aside all work and just be with her. And so these kind of counsel and words that have come to me from a very early formative years of my life, and I'm sure many of us, all of us here, will have similar stories from our own lives, really show the very central place mothers have held in our lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be always the biological mother. It could be that mother figure in our lives. So whoever, as we grow up, there are always these formative influences we have. And there will be always these elders in the family. It could be either the biological mother or a mother-like influence. And they shape a lot of how we think, what we do, how we relate to other people. It's possible to trace it back to some of these very formative influences we have had in our childhood. Seeing what the mother meant to all these great ones, some of the examples we saw as in Jesus and Chaitanya and Ramakrishna and others, and what mother means in our own lives, we see what a tremendous work the mothers all over the world are doing, a work that is not often recognized. When people ask, what do you do? Simply saying, I'm a mother, should be enough actually. What could be higher, better, more important work than that? And so, so that's I think very important to remember. A lot of some of the most important things that occur in life occur very silently, without anything. Even they say the morning dew, it's so silent. No, but if there were no dew at all, if dew were to vanish from the earth, so much catastrophe would occur. But we don't even notice about it. Most of the time, we don't even think about it. So a mother's work, what the mother does is very silent, very subtle, but it's probably the foundation on which how the world moves and functions. And as I said, the mother at home is not the only mother in our lives, although even then, a mother will always hold a very special and unique place in our lives. Think about it this way. Looked at it in a very objective, non-sentimental way, our mother or father or whoever this elderly close figure in our life is just one of the billions of human beings in the world. And yet we know she's somehow more special. She's somehow unique in her own way. And when we grow old, clearly, as we grow older in life, we will have, as I said before, besides the mother who gave us birth, we may have meet and be close to other mother-like figures in our lives. And as we grow old, we also grow increasingly dependent on others. Just as our children were dependent on us when they were young, when we grow old, we become dependent on others and sometimes on our own children. And that's why it's sometimes said, old age is a second childhood. And sometimes our own children then will become as if take the place of our parents. Recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in Canada and in Edmonton, in Alberta province, and we were having a question-answer discussion. So one of the members there, and she was one who actually helped in found that devotee group. So she is in her close to 80 now, and so she was saying, she says, my daughter now, I'm learning so much from my daughter, and she tells me what to do and what not to do. And I told her, I said, she is your mother now and you are her child. And all of us probably have experienced it or probably will experience it sooner or later. And it's kind of nice to see our children taking kind of a responsibility. So sooner or later, this time will come if it has not come already. But a mother that we have spoken of until now is not the only mother in some ways. There is a tradition by which they speak about 5 mothers. It's called Pancha Janani in Sanskrit. One is the Griha Janani, the mother at home, about which we have already spoken a lot now. But there are also 4 other mothers in our lives. In Sanskrit, they're called Desha Janani, the place or the land as mother. Bhasha Janani, the language as mother. Samskriti Janani, the tradition as mother. And Vishwa Janani, the universal mother, the whole existence itself as mother. So very quickly, Desha Janani, the place as mother. We see that in the Native American tradition. There is so much this reverence for the land. The land itself is sacred. Looking upon the land on which we grow itself as mother. One of the rituals in the daily worship that we do is looking upon the earth as a mother goddess and recognizing that it's the earth that supports us. In fact, there is a verse which oftentimes in very orthodox circles, say every time people wake up in the morning, before they place their foot on the ground, their feet on the ground, they say that prayer to the Mother Earth, recognizing that because in the Indian tradition, it's considered disrespectful to touch anything with feet, and of course, how would life be if we don't be walking? We are just touching the earth, Mother Earth, with feet all the time. And so there is this prayer which recognizing and seeking forgiveness from the goddess Earth, that please forgive me that as I go about my day's duties, I have to trample you with my feet. But recognizing that the earth itself is a mother. When India became free politically, and they wanted to choose the national anthem. And the first choice for that national anthem was a beautiful hymn written by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. It's called Vande Mataram, I salute the mother, looking upon the land, the country, the nation itself as mother. And this idea of looking upon the land as mother is the basis of patriotism. Why do I love my country? Just as my mother feeds me, nourishes me, it's my country, the country of my birth, that has fed me, that has nourished me. There's a saying in Sanskrit which Holy Mother often referred to. It's called Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi, which means my mother and Janma Bhumi, the land of my birth, are higher or greater than even the joys of heaven. There is such a thing as some kind of a connection with the soil of your birth. Now, sometimes I know this sounds a little abstract, very poetic. Oh, you're connected with the earth. And sometimes some people may roll their eyes with this kind of a thing. It might seem very poetic, as I said, but it's not. It's more than poetic. There is something more, something a little bit visceral about it. And I experienced it only once, and I'm sure many of you may have more stories about it. And this happened now about almost 18 years ago. So that was the time when I was assigned from Belmont to come to Boston. And I went to the airport. Of course, my parents were there and many monks, and it was a big crowd at the airport to see me off. And that was the first time I was ever leaving the country in which I was born. And I wasn't, some of them were kind of weeping. My mom, my dad, they were a little, because I was going away, they never knew when I would be seeing them again or they would be seeing me again. But somehow, I wasn't feeling too emotional at that time. So everything went smoothly. I got in through the security, the customs, everything. And the planes of these international flights in India, most of them start at very god-awful hour. It's like 2 a.m. in the morning or something. I had this window seat. So I was sitting. And then as the flight taxied and as it was taking off, and as I saw the land receding, and I was taken completely by surprise. I had never expected it. It almost felt like a tree being uprooted. It was so shocking. It's just like as if a part of me was being left behind. That I felt it only once. Not every time I go to India, I don't feel it that way. But that one time I felt it, and I suddenly thought that all these books that they have said about this connection with the earth, there is some truth to that. It's not just a poetic thing. And so there is the land as mother. And we know, and as I've already referred to, in many Native American traditions, that the sanctity of land, one of the reasons that they didn't want to leave the land on which they grew. So that's Desha Janani. The next mother in our lives is, in Sanskrit, is called Bhasha Janani, the language as mother. And that's why we know the language we grow up, our native language, we just call it the mother tongue. Now, all of our thinking occurs in a language. Our stories are expressed through words, and words need a language. So, and every life, as I've said, is a one long story, or a collection of several short stories. So the language in which we think is like a mother to us. One of our very senior Swamis, who later became head of the order, and some of you who have been coming here for a long time have probably seen him. His name was Swami Ranganathanandaji. He's come here several times to Boston as well. So he used to narrate one incident. So he said that when he was young, he was probably 9 or 10 years old, and he said he'd gone to school, and then he picked up some slang, abusive words from some friends in school, and then he came home and rattled them off just to show off to his mother. And his mother was shocked to see him using this foul language. And so he used to narrate later. He said, instead of scolding him, his mother called him and said, look, the mother Saraswati, that's the goddess of knowledge, she dwells on the tongue. So when you use this kind of a foul, offensive language, it's like insulting that mother. So don't do it. And he said, she told it in such a gentle way. And he said that remained with him all his life. Never again, throughout his life, was he able to use not just any foul language, but any kind of offensive, hurtful language. So that's how language as a mother. And that's why the idea, so Saraswati, goddess of knowledge, She embodies this, the words and everything. So even how we use words, how we use language is a way of recognizing of how we treat a mother. If we make good use of the language, take good care of it, then we are treating that mother well. So Bhasha Janani and this kind of an attachment to language is a very powerful force. Sometimes, of course, it does get manipulated in politics using the attachment to language and so on. But there is something very very close connection. Now, I said that we think in a particular language. Usually that language is our mother tongue, but doesn't have to be. Sometimes when people, and nowadays becoming increasingly more in the world in which we live, with easy mobility, easy modes of travel, and possibility of people emigrating from one place to another. And so sometimes our own native language may not, although it's still our mother tongue, may not remain the first language. We may increasingly operate and function in a different, now I'm speaking in English, that's not my mother tongue, that's not my native language. But over time, if we are increasingly in an environment which we might feel more comfortable in a language other than one's own, and then our thinking also may occur in that language. Yet another mother is Samskriti Janani, the tradition as mother. Just as the mother protects and nourishes her children, whatever tradition we are a part of protects and nourishes us. We know that not everything can be learned from books. Not everything can be reasoned out. A lot of what we do, a lot of what we think, a lot of what we say and how we say it comes to us through tradition. Now, what's important here is not that tradition is a word that can often get very misused and abused also. So it's not as if we just have to do it because sometimes people want you to do something and say, just do it, that's the tradition. So we have to be a little careful here. So while tradition, it's true. Tradition does help and protect us. But that does not take away from us, from our lives, the right to question what is often passed to us as tradition. Also recognizing that tradition needs to be updated, needs to evolve. Just as the society evolves, people evolve, a tradition also needs to evolve. So we cannot say the way things were done 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago and say that's the tradition. Sure, that's the tradition, it needs to be respected, but we need to update it to our existing situation today. Otherwise, that tradition can become a bondage. Rather than freeing us, rather than bringing out our potential further, it can in fact inhibit our progress. And finally, I said 5 mothers, so we have covered 4 mothers. So last mother is Vishwajanani, the universal mother. And universal mother, often we can see the existence itself, God as mother. Now, looking upon God as mother is not a new idea, especially in many of the Eastern traditions. If anyone ever doubted the possibility that there is or there could be some kind of a real big universal mother, we can recollect the story. I had read for this story earlier, but I think it will be good to remind ourselves of it again. The possibility that there is this big universal mother, divine mother. So here is the story. In a mother's womb were 2 babies. One asked, so mother was going to give birth to twins, and so these 2 babies are in the mother's womb. One asked the other, do you believe in life after delivery? The other replied, why, of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later. Nonsense, said the first. There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be? The second said, I don't know, but there will be more light than here. Maybe we will walk with our legs and eat from our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now. The first replied, that is absurd. Walking is impossible. And eating with our mouths? Ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need. But the umbilical cord is so short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded. The second insisted, well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different from what it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore. The first replied, nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life. And in the after delivery, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere. Well, I don't know, said the second. But certainly, we will meet Mother and she will take care of us. The first replied, Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists then, where is she now? The second said, she is all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist. Said the first, well, I don't see her, so it is only logical that she doesn't exist. To which the second replied, sometimes when you are in silence and you focus and you really listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above. That's so true. So this provides something profound. It's a simple story. It might look very funny, but it's so true. There's no way for us to disprove that there is this big divine mother, and we can keep on questioning as much as we want, but deep down in silence, and that's when people, when they meditate, when they pray, there are times when they experience that inner silence. That's when they know. It's not reasoned out logically. It's not that they have had some profound samadhi or anything, but deep down we know, yes, there is that truth, there is that mother. And this is true in another sense too. Even of our own mothers. Even if our own mothers, if they are not physically present, or if they are far away, or if they have passed away, even then, if we just go deep down in your heart, and you will be able to hear the voice of your mother, the way she used to call you when you were a little child, when you were a little baby. That will never go away. Motherhood is sacred. Being grateful to our own mothers and to the ideal of motherhood and what motherhood represents is very important for progressing in spiritual life. In fact, every spiritual seeker becomes a mother in some way. Our spiritual life itself can be seen as a little baby. And we know that especially in the initial stages, how much care, how much attention, how much sacrifice is needed to take good care of that baby. So as we begin and resume and continue with our spiritual life, we have to take care of this spiritual baby within us. And so therefore, in some ways, every spiritual seeker is a mother. The way if we are able to take good care of this spiritual life as a baby in our own heart, if we take good care of it, then that baby will grow strong. Our spiritual life will get strong. And therefore, on this day of the Mother's Day, as we bow down with respect, with gratitude, with love to the presence of mother in our lives, we have also to see that in some way those qualities associated with motherhood have become, have been a part of our own lives. So irrespective of, you don't have to be a woman to be a mother. Irrespective of what gender we belong to, we all can be mothers. It really has, the gender is completely immaterial actually. Yeah, so my salutations to all the mothers of the past, all the mothers of the present, and all the mothers of the future. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Next Sunday, our topic will be the story of Shankara. Shankaracharya's birthday comes this week according to the Indian calendar. So next Sunday we will reflect on his life and teachings. On Wednesday we will continue with the study of the Gita. We are presently studying chapter 14. And on Tuesday and Saturday our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. So let's conclude with a prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.